will gradually ease and become more showery, staying mostly dry elsewhere with sunny spells developing. And that's how the weather is shaping up during tomorrow morning.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
we're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Happy Jubilee to you. We are coming to the end of the first day of Her Majesty's Platinum Jubilee, and we have breaking news from Buckingham Palace. The Queen did enjoy the parade and the flypast today, but with great reluctance. Her Majesty has decided that she will not attend the service of Thanksgiving at St. Paul's because of the discomfort she experienced in the course of today's events. In about 90 minutes' time, we will have the lighting of the Jubilee beacon at Windsor Castle, one of thousands of beacons in every Commonwealth capital throughout these islands and in every one of the overseas territories. They're what we used to call crown colonies, from Pitcairn Island to the British Indian Ocean Territory to St Helena to the Falklands to the Turks and Caicos. And I believe tonight we'll also hear the winning song from the Commonwealth. Upon the occasion of Her Majesty's Jubilee, they had entries from every corner of our great imperial family, and the winner is a song called A Life Lived with Grace by a Nigerian composer, Atuyi Vincent Chinamelu, and an Australian lyricist, Lucy Keeling, and choirs all over the country and the Commonwealth have been practicing that new song. David Starkey's here to put these last 7 decades in the context of the golden tapestry of British history. Leilani Dowding is here, and L. Ian MacDonald to represent the Queen's overseas realms, and Mike Batt, remember, he's not just a Womble, he's also an LVO, a Lieutenant of the Royal Victorian Order, because he does a lot of the music at the palace, so he knows the favourite tunes of Her Majesty. Maybe we'll ask him what he thinks of that song from the Commonwealth. Plus, the most important part, your thoughts on this historic day. There has never been a Platinum Jubilee before, and it will require an extraordinary combination of circumstances for it to come again. And who knows by then what state the Crown's dominions will be in, not just overseas, but even perhaps in the component parts of the UK too. So this is a day we shall not see again. Let me know where you think Crown and country and Commonwealth are headed. You can email me, gbviews@gbnews.uk. You can tweet me at gbnews. All that coming up after the news with Polly Middlehurst.
Mark, thank you. Good evening to you. As you were hearing, the Queen will miss tomorrow's Thanksgiving service at St Paul's Cathedral after experiencing some discomfort during today's Platinum Jubilee celebrations. Buckingham Palace says the decision was made with great reluctance. But earlier, joined by members of the royal family on the balcony at Buckingham Palace, Her Majesty watched as Royal Air Force jets flew in formation of the number 70, marking the number of years of her reign. The red arrows also stream the colours of the Union flag across the skies, and royal gun salutes have taken place across the UK. Millions of people across the nation have also been celebrating the occasion.
We do it really well in Britain, don't we? Nobody like us Brits can put on a show. It is amazing, absolutely amazing.
I was going to say the music for me, the band was probably my number one, but I did have a glimpse of Princess Anne on her horse as well.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, you saw Princess Anne, didn't you?
Oh, it was just lovely, and then there was all the carriages with Kate and Camilla and all those. It was just lovely, wasn't it? Yeah. We're so glad we came. We ummed and ahed, but it was a lot of hard work to get here and so busy, but worth every minute, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Well, President Biden and the First Lady have also wished Her Majesty a joyful Platinum Jubilee celebration.
Congratulations on your Platinum Jubilee. For 70 years, you've inspired people with your selfless devotion and service to the people of the United Kingdom and the Commonwealth. On behalf of the people of the United States, we send you our best wishes to you and the people around the world marking this momentous and historic occasion.
Well, the Duke of York will miss tomorrow's Jubilee Thanksgiving service as well at St Paul's Cathedral. He's tested positive for COVID. Buckingham Palace says the infection came to light during routine testing. It's understood Prince Andrew has seen the Queen in the last few days, but not since he tested positive. And more than 1,000 people have been honoured in the Queen's Jubilee Honours List. Medical staff who worked through the COVID pandemic are among them, including NHS Director Professor Stephen Powis, who'll be made a Knight. Chief Nursing Officer Ruth May, who'll be made a Dame. The actor Damian Lewis has been made a CBE, and the crime writer Ian Rankin has been knighted. Meanwhile, the former Northern Ireland First Minister and GB News presenter Arlene Foster has been made a Dame. In international news, the NATO Secretary-General says the alliance is addressing Turkey's concerns over Sweden and Finland's request to join the military group. The two Nordic nations said yesterday they'll continue discussions with Turkey over their bids to join. That comes after President Zelensky of Ukraine said Russia now occupies a fifth of his country. Speaking after a meeting with President Biden, Jens Stoltenberg said it's up to Ukraine to negotiate how they want to end the war. You're up to date on TV, online and on your radio via DAB+. And now it's time for Mark Steyn.
Thank you, Polly, and congratulations to Arlene on that DBE. There are many dames all over the Queen's realms, but Arlene is one of only a handful who can say she became a dame in the Platinum Jubilee Honours. Are they going to change the name to the Dame Arlene Show? I certainly hope so. Not a lot survives from 1952. Harry Truman was in the White House. Joe Stalin was in the Kremlin. Chairman Mao had just taken over in China. The British Empire was still a phrase taken seriously. It was not yet a joke and then a hate crime. Truman, Stalin, Mao are all long gone, but the Queen is still there. Most of her cousins in the other European monarchies are not. She's a survivor and they weren't. Her husband could have told her all about that. His grandfather was assassinated. His father was forced into exile when Prince Philip was just 18 months old. Ours is not an age of kings, and those born to royalty have to be pretty nimble. In the end, Said the late King Farouk, there will be just 5 kings, the 4 in a pack of cards, and the King of England, or the Queen. What comes after monarchy is not always pretty. Almost all of young Philip's big sisters, for example, married serious big-time Nazis. But the Queen endures, and for most of her subjects, she is the only queen we have ever known. She first appeared on a banknote when she was an 8-year-old girl. That's the Canadian $20 bill of 1935. 87 years later, she's still on the Canadian $20 bill. And in between those two notes, she has graced more stamps, more coins, and more banknotes of more countries than anybody in the history of the planet. Here is our Queen through all the decades of her reign. Let's start in coronation year with a high denomination note from Malaya and Borneo, $1,000. And that's the young Queen there. Let's go to the dawn of the 60s and Jamaica. And the 10-shilling note. And Boris, if he had anything about him, would use Brexit to bring back proper currency, including shillings and half a crowns and all the rest of it. Come on, Boris. Great way to commemorate the Jubilee. Here's a pound note from Zambia as we move into the 60s. Young Queen again. And Malta, a 10-shilling note from Malta. Let's have a look at that. And Mauritius. Can't just have shillings and pounds. This is 5 rupees in Mauritius. Here's, let's get into the 70s. Here's Australia when they renamed their currency the dollar as Commonwealth of Australia. And into the 80s, only one territory we could have for the 80s, the Falkland Islands £20 note. 1994, the Eastern Caribbean $5 bill. A little middle-aged image into the Queen, and as we move from the 90s into the new century, Fiji, and we're getting used to seeing the lines etched on the Queen's face because she never takes a day off. Here from the teens, a slightly wacky denomination, a $3 bill from the Bahamas, and finally for the 20s, A20, the current $20 bill from New Zealand. Long she has reigned over us. In Malta a couple of years back, Justin Trudeau toasted her at the Commonwealth banquet by noting that his dad had been her 4th Canadian Prime Minister and he was her 12th.
Majesty has been such a constant presence in the life of Canada that a modern history of our nation could be written entirely with vignettes from your life. Here's one. In 1951, Princess Elizabeth attends her first hockey game at the legendary Montreal Forum. And another, in 1959, Queen Elizabeth opens the St. Lawrence Seaway. And another, in 1967, Queen Elizabeth cuts Canada's centennial cake on Parliament Hill as Canadians sing happy birthday.
To all of which Her Majesty replied,
"Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister of Canada, for making me feel so old."
Well, the Queen is even older today, but there she was, as always, not in a great conclave of prime ministers, not a PM in sight, thank God, but in splendid isolation, save for her cousin, the Duke of Kent, on the Buckingham Palace balcony. Working for the Free French in London during the war, Simone Veil found herself pondering why, among the European powers, only England had maintained a centuries-old tradition of liberty. She was struck by the paradox of the Westminster system, that ultimate power is vested in one who cannot wield it in any practical sense, except that by the mere fact of her existence, she diminishes the politicians. Let me know your thoughts on this unique occasion. David Starkey has been on air all day. He was on the Mall with Alistair Stewart for the raising of the Royal Standard to show that after a long absence, Her Majesty was once again home at Buckingham Palace. David, what do you make of this first day of the Jubilee observances?
Well, I think you put your finger on it. The extraordinary image is that of the Queen, this little, old, 96-year-old woman, effectively alone in front of that enormous crowd on the balcony. We've never seen her like that before. She's always been surrounded by the family. This was an event for her, about her, dedicated to her. I shall never forget it. I saw the coronation as an 8-year-old boy on television, the first time I'd seen television. I remember detail after detail. She talked in the message that she issued for the Jubilee about memory. It will be that memory of her alone, which of course fundamentally was also what we actually saw in the coronation. You know, she was crowned without a consort. She was there, 25-year-old woman, just like the first Queen Elizabeth at the same age, sitting alone on that throne. And fundamentally, she begins and she will end in the same way. It is what monarchy is about. It's that extraordinary interchange between what you were talking about, this great centuries, actually 1,000-year-old institution, and a particular individual. But there was one thing I worried about a little in what you were talking about. You seem to suggest that the recession of empire somehow marked decline, failure. The peculiarity, Mark, about the British Empire is that it willed its own end. And that's an extraordinary thing. You were a Canadian. Canada was to be not the United States. Canada was not to rebel. So you had the Durham Report, which actually realised that the natural destiny of the great dominions was to be free, independent, perhaps keeping the Queen, perhaps becoming republics. That was uncertain. But that is again something wholly remarkable. The British Empire largely did not end in bloodshed. It didn't end in revolt. It ended in a planned process. And again, you talked about it as empire fading. The empire hasn't faded. It's left Canada. It's left Australia. It's left New Zealand. It's left South Africa. It's left the United States. No other empire has left their children. They're the children of empire. They are offspring. They're offspring of Britain. And I think, again, it's this sense that we use the same word. We talk about the royal family. We talk about the family of British nations. And if, again, we've been looking at the horrors in the Ukraine. If you look at the only group, apart from those countries in Eastern Europe that directly border on Russia, the only nations that have stood solidly, vigorously, rearming the Ukraine are the old British Empire and the United States, which is the original bit of the British Empire. I actually think that's something to be rather proud of. We've been doing too much of this recessional business. I think we need to reverse gear very sharp. And also, you're wrong. There are lots of monarchies in Europe. All the most stable states in Europe are monarchies. Denmark, the Netherlands, Norway, Sweden. The states that are in crisis are boring republics like France and Germany and Italy. Spain is where we restored a monarchy.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you on any of that, and I think you're quite right that almost all the best. If you look at these quality of life things or the things put out by Freedom House, all the best. Yeah, on freedom, all the constitutional monarchy is a brilliant system, and I agree with you too. The Queen presided over decolonisation in the 50s, 60s and 70s. And whatever one makes of the Commonwealth, it is largely her creation, and she loves it. And it can seem this slightly absurd thing, as it did to people like Enoch Powell, but she loves it and she made it into something.
Yeah, I think there is a problem because the Commonwealth, the fact that she's head of the Commonwealth and that she's passed it on to Charles, it's the only area where she's not got a politician to blame. And that, it's a real issue. And the trouble is, of course, the royal family, as we've seen in the Caribbean, they look as though they're representatives of Britain. They're not. They're only there because in those countries, Bermuda or wherever it was, the monarchy is still sovereign. But there is this awful sense that they're somehow representing Britain and they carry a responsibility for supposed, British atrocities in the past. And this is something I think that will have to be addressed. The Queen's role, I suspect, should really, although she's wanted to hand it on to Charles, I suspect it's something, honestly, that should die with her. It puts the monarchy in this extraordinarily exposed position where there's nothing to protect it, and that's a bad idea.
Yes, but in sense, she played the cards she was dealt.
Truly.
And I know you've met a lot of the continental sovereigns, and you like the Queen of Denmark, and I've met a couple of them, and they're very pleasurable. But they're not the Queen. She is a great global figure.
That is true. Yeah, no. Again, your wonderful remark of King Farouk. Soon there will only be 5 kings in the world. But it is, of course, she is the echo of the British Empire. She's the echo that when I was a boy, when I watched the coronation, aged 8, most of the map, or a huge part of the map, was still coloured. Do you remember, for some odd reason, the empire was coloured pink? Later on, I speculated why. Later on, I speculated why. So it's this after echo of great imperial power. And again, it's something, I think, in Britain that we underestimate the consequences of. London is still really the world capital. I know New York, I know Paris, whatever. They don't actually compare with what London still feels like. The event today was remarkable. You still had the sense of eyes upon it, of something that echoes not simply in Horse Guards, not simply in Whitehall, not simply in the Mall, but genuinely still echoes across the world, as we heard the rather slurry, dare I say this, President Biden offering his congratulations.
Yes, that was a rather
very slurry
weird moment.
It's interesting to notice how, at 20 years older, how much more precise, coherent and forceful the Queen is.
Oh no, she's a generation older than him, and she does all her red boxes before she goes to bed at night, and she's more on top. If you ask her about the most tiniest of her realms, if you asked her what's going on in Tuvalu, she would know everything that was happening there. She takes that very seriously. Thank you very much, David. You've done cracking work all day with Alistair Stewart, and we loved watching it. Up next, we're going to get your take at GB Views at gbnews.uk. We have Leilani Dowding, Mike Batt, and Elian MacDonald on The View from the Commonwealth on what music the Queen likes, and God help us, we'll even do a wee bit of Harry and Meghan. But don't touch that dial because it's not going to be too much. I won't be able to stand too much, not on a beautiful, glorious day like this. We're coming right back on this historic Jubilee. Stay with us.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
we're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Defence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah. We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Defence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Let's get to your comments. You've been sending us your favourite memories of the Queen. Rhiannon says, I went with my parents to see them both get awarded their MBE together. Off the Queen at Buckhouse. It was magical. Nancy says, seeing her in person at Woodbine Racetrack on Queen's Plate Day. Back in the early 90s here in Canada. Actually in Toronto. That's my hometown. I've been to see the Queen's Plate, and it's always much more special if the Queen is there. Prince Philip was walking 20 paces behind her. Clay says the fondest memory is her service during World War II. Yeah, she was one of the Land Army girls, and that's serious. I mean, the Queen actually knows how to open up a Land Rover, stick her head inside the bonnet and fix the thing. She learned a lot during her service during World War II, and it was very real to her. And it's why even as the long haul trips faded away, she would still always be there for World War II commemorations. You know, you're a serious constitutionalist, we just touched on this, when you're affronted by the Queen's Christmas message to the Commonwealth. But as David Starkey was noting about this matter, the late Enoch Powell loved his sovereign but loathed the office of head of the Commonwealth because, as he saw it, it enabled Her Majesty to wiggle free of ministerial advice, or as David just put it, of political protection, having some rinky-dink prime minister there in front of her to take the bullet, as it were. When the Queen speaks as head of the Commonwealth, she can say whatever the hell she likes. When she speaks as Queen of the United Kingdom, UK ministers write the words that she utters. When she speaks as Queen of Australia or Queen of St Kitts, likewise her Australian or St Kitts ministers put the words in her mouth. Granted her long reign and the thousands upon thousands of here today, gone tomorrow politicians who have come and gone, it is a very select group of people who have written for her, and one of them is L. Ian MacDonald, a former diplomat and currently editor and publisher of Policy magazine, who for a while wrote speeches for the Queen of Canada. Ian, I'm sure it's one thing to have to write something for a prime minister or whatever, but having to put words into the Queen's mouth is of a different order, I would have thought.
Yes, and if you gave her a text that said, I now declare this bridge open, she would get through it and deliver it as written. But if it was a meaningful occasion and she had an opportunity to add a personal touch, she would do so. As she did, to give you one example, in 1990, when she came to Ottawa on Canada Day and was meant to declare taking effect of a new constitutional amendment called the Meech Lake Accord, which died a week before it was to have taken effect that day, because it hadn't been passed through all the provinces, and it caused a bit of a constitutional crisis between Quebec and the rest of Canada, a bit of a French-English divide, a linguistic and cultural divide. And she added to the text we had written for her. She said, I'm not just a fair weather friend. I'm glad to be here at this sensitive time. And she went on and said, knowing Canadians as I do, I cannot believe that they will not be able, after a period of reflection, to find a way through present difficulties. And the British press corps who were traveling with her told us that they'd never heard such a political speech from her. But it was a touch was all her own. I was holding the pen on that speech, working with her office. And the first time I heard her say that was when she delivered it, and she had checked it only with the Prime Minister, Mr. Mulroney, at a breakfast that morning, or a lunch, an early lunch at 24 Sussex, Tower 10 Downing Street, as you know.
But she is slightly different then from, if you think of, Mr. Gorbachev tear down that wall, that went through 37 different drafts. People in the State Department kept taking it out, and Reagan kept putting it back in, blah, blah, blah. But with the Queen, it's in a certain sense, it's regal and formal. But at another level, she'll say what she wants to say.
Yes, and she has her own touch, as we saw 2 years ago with her remarkable speech at the beginning of the pandemic, where she, basically ended with "We'll find a way to be together again," and it broke into the famous song of Vera Lynn from the war, which was her first service. So that was her touch. She has elegance, she has class, style, and grace, and when you're dealing with her through her office, you're dealing directly with her through her team, and they're first class.
There used to be. I don't know whether you stuck this line in, but I noted it at the time, because at one point, and she had variations of it wherever she was in the Commonwealth, but she used to say something along the lines of, "I speak to you as Queen of Canada and Queen of all Canadians." I don't know whether that's one of your lines, but we miss it by the fact that she's now unable to travel. And I wonder whether, as loved as she is, whether it's going to be the same moving forward through the years.
With Charles. With her successor. Charles is much more controversial and much more of a tabloid figure than his mother.
So you think that, in fact, all the things the younger royals do to make themselves, more, quote, relevant, actually, by talking about climate change or racism or whatever, actually makes them more of a problem and misunderstands the role?
No, I think Prince Charles is very, and has long been, to his credit, an activist on climate change. It's just that the tabs are obsessed with his personal life and that of his siblings and his sons. So that's a different conversation altogether. It has nothing to do with the Queen.
Well, the Queen's great insight is that the Queen doesn't have to do, she has to be. But your experience with her is that on this and that local political issue, she in fact has an interest, has a point of view, and if necessary, is happy to speak out.
Yes, and in fact, she has personal touches that are relevant. For example, in 1992, on another Canada Day on July 1st, she had an early lunch with Mr. Mulroney again at 24 Sussex, and was going over the text that we had written for her. And she looked at him and said, "Prime Minister, we should refer to the role of your peacekeepers in somewhere in the Middle East." And we hadn't thought of that. And once again, the first time I heard that was when she said it, and it was the biggest applause line in her speech. She had a very good sense of connecting with the public.
Yeah, it's a wonderful thing to be able to because the Queen is one of those few people who has to have things written for her under constitutional convention. It has to be the government that puts the words in her mouth. So she's not someone who has a speechwriter just because she's not a very good public speaker in the way it is with some senator or congressman or whatever south of the border. But in all those speeches, you always saw a personal input from her.
Yes. Didn't have direct conversations with her, but you could see it in the product, her personal touches. And if the handwritten notes are those occasions or her marginal handwritten notes of those texts are extant somewhere at Windsor Castle or in some other storage or archival area. That you'll see that one day.
Okay, well, we'll look for. They probably are. You're right. They're probably in the archives of that whatever they call it, the Great Tower at Windsor Castle. So you'll have your place in the great pageantry of the House of Windsor. Thank you very much, Elliot MacDonald. It's great to see you, and it's good to be reminded that this Queen is not like the Queen of Denmark or the Queen of the Netherlands. She is Queen of a lot of real estate all around the planet. King Edward VIII would have made a disastrous monarch. He was a pretty terrible governor of the Bahamas, which was the job they found for him. So we should be grateful to that American divorcee for taking him off our hands. I feel a little differently about the Duke of Sussex and his American divorcee, because in his short time in royal service, he made a real connection with people, not least with his fellow soldiers. It was very moving to see him in Italy on the 70th anniversary of the capture of the Benedictine monastery at Monte Cassino with the Kiwi veterans who bore the brunt of that terrible battle. He was introduced at one point not as Prince Harry of Wales, but as Prince Harry of New Zealand. And I thought, oh yeah, I can see that. I can see him as Governor General of New Zealand. He's got just the right blend of royal duty and the modern touch. And now he lives in a beach house in La La Land and goes on Oprah's TV show. But we're supposed to be grateful that they came back for the Jubilee. Our pal and yours, Leilani Dowding, is with us. So if I understand, the official version is, Meghan just wants to be, she's like Greta Garbo, I want to be alone. And so she wanted to be alone, and she goes and takes a big mansion on the beach at Malibu. I can't quite follow the logic of that.
Well, that's it. Our little Miss Privacy, I want to be alone, I want to be out the public eye, has moved to Los Angeles, and she's got a huge Netflix show, a reality show. Now, as somebody that moved to LA and lived there for 17 years and opened myself up to many reality shows, you do neither. If you want privacy, you do neither. If you're a private person, you have to be an open person. You have to be willing to share all sorts. And she's just so disingenuous to come on and say that was the reason for leaving royal life. Just be honest. Just say you didn't want to do the royal duties. So, yes, Meghan.
Yeah, Meghan. That's very well put. I feel that Prince Harry is a loss, and I regret a lot of what's happened to him. But I can't stand the humbug. When they walked out on the royal family, they were doing we love the Commonwealth. We're devoted to the Commonwealth. They went to Canada House in London, and then they flew to British Columbia, and they stuck Canada for about 3 weeks. They were living on an island with a lot of Canadian rock stars and television personalities, and then they eventually decided, we've had 3 weeks of Canadian celebrity. We're going to go to Beverly Hills and have the real A-list guys. I mean, it's this. Why don't you just say, no, the whole royal family thing was too provincial and boring for us? Why didn't she say, just be honest about it?
Well, this is it. I think that there's a whole Disney version of being a princess that she thought she is, or she thinks she is, which doesn't include royal duties. And royal duties include going out and meeting people and the general everyday people and listening to them and what they want. And she wasn't game. She thought it was all going to be dress up and glam. And you know what? Here she is, back in England again for one of the biggest celebrations. Everyone's out celebrating, whether you love or hate royalty. Everyone's out enjoying themselves over this long bank holiday weekend. And it's always the parties and the glamour that she wants to be at, and none of the hard work. So, it wasn't surprising that she wasn't allowed on the balcony, but she made sure that she was photographed in the window at the time.
I'm always slightly surprised. That balcony window thing is a very, she wasn't on the balcony, but she was in some major general's window or whatever it was. And I'm always surprised that the way the American networks are still sort of interested in her, because I don't get the sense that the public is. I think if the public was forced to choose between Harry and Meghan and their desperate need to be in show business and the Queen just getting on with the job, the public choose the Queen every time.
Absolutely. I mean, especially in England, you see it. There are very few people that like Meghan now, and I think the sad thing is people really did actually embrace her. When she first came into the royal family, I thought she was wonderful. And then, the English people saw through it. The British people saw through it. And I think very slowly Americans are. She didn't go and see her father after he's been in hospital, but she went to the, where there were the school shootings in, I can't pronounce it,
Uvalde in Texas.
Uvalde, and she's done the photo op, and there's a photo of her looking as though she's looking in the back of the camera to see the picture. And a lot of my American friends sent me a message and just said, "Wow, we see what you've been saying now." So I think Americans are waking up, and the British public, they're out, they're enjoying the Jubilee, and hopefully she doesn't put too much of a dampener on it and go back and start selling all her stories about how awful they are and how badly treated she and all these nonsense lies.
No, the funny thing is that actually being a minor royal duchess is kind of a boring job, and certainly if you're an actress and you think of it as a celebrity life, you wouldn't want to do it because, I've got to go to Bermuda and be colonel-in-chief of some regiment I've never heard of. I thought it was going to be more interesting than that. Or I've got to talk to some guy from Bangladesh at the Commonwealth Day service about a rural ambulance service he's starting up. And this Bangladeshi guy is a nobody, but I'm a royal duchess, so I've got to pretend to be interested in him. And she just couldn't. She'd just rather be with George Clooney or whoever she's palling around with. It just wasn't glamorous enough being a princess.
Well, I agree. I think that's what it is. I mean, you don't go to LA for a quiet life, do you? I certainly didn't, and I don't know in the years that I lived there anyone who did. And and it's not just the international. You've got to go up to rainy Cleethorpes or somewhere in Lancashire or wherever and go and speak to somebody in a biscuit factory. Just everyday normal people. It isn't a glamorous job, it's a duty. And I just think she thought she's watched too many Disney movies. She thought it's all about putting on pretty dresses, waltzing around. And it's a shame because the public really loved Harry. We really did love him. He was like the naughty, cheeky chappy of the royal family. And he was a little bit different, and now he's just like, oh God, Mr. Noors, he's so boring now. It's like, where's our Harry gone?
No, that's true. He's got to get out from under all that. By the way, Leilani, GBNews wishes to apologise formally for your implication that Cleethorpes is not as glamorous as Beverly Hills. We utterly reject that. We utterly reject. Cleethorpes is way more glamorous than Beverly Hills. Thank you very much, Leilani, and happy Jubilee to you. Coming up, we're going to go stumping the Steyn, and tomorrow the Queen will be enduring a lot of terrible, wrinkly old rockers at the palace, but Mike Batt knows the music she really likes, and he's up next.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
we're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Defence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Defence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Here is Princess Elizabeth and her young husband in Ottawa in 1951 when the Governor-General, Viscount Alexander, decided to throw a square dance for her. Let's have a look at this. I love this picture. Yeah, look at Prince Philip there. They had a grand old time square dancing, and they picked up the booze pretty quickly because it was like a lot of the Highland dancing they do at Balmoral. I've actually been in that room, although I was more formally dressed than the Duke of Edinburgh is there in his blue jeans and checkered shirt. The Queen likes to dance, and she likes music she can dance to, and few people know more about that than Mike Batt. And I don't know whether Her Majesty is a fan of Mike's wombling songs, but she certainly is a fan of his arranging and conducting skills. Here he is conducting the song he wrote for the Golden Jubilee. This is Katie Malua singing I Will Be There.
She's like the lady down the road, or just the woman up the street, like any mother you may know. To me, she is the
one. Stuff. Mike Batt, Lieutenant of the Royal Victorian Order, joins me now. Great to see you, Mike. We hear all this stuff. You know, the Queen is going to have to put up, as I said, with all these wrinkly old rockers tonight. What is it the Queen actually likes? What is the music that gets a rise out of her?
Well, I know that you've invited me on the assumption that I know the answer to that question, Mark. And it's so lovely, by the way, to play that little snippet of the song I wrote for her 10 years ago, it is now. Just shows how quickly time flies. It seems like yesterday. And in fact, I wrote that song about the matriarchal, so I'm not answering your question, but just about that, the sort of matriarch. And she was exactly this, my mother was exactly the same age. And sadly, my mother wasn't going to make it much longer past that age 10 years ago, which she didn't. And she died only a week before the performance that we did in Buckingham Palace Gardens, but it was written to be a song about a mother figure who in the Queen's case, is caring for the people that she represents all around the world. Anyway, listen, you didn't ask me about that. I'm just going to say it was nice of you to play it. I've written quite a few things for, if you like, by royal appointment. But that doesn't mean that she sort of goes through everything that I particularly do. That was just a commission. I know that, I say, every time I mention any contact I've had with Her Majesty, I probably ought to have a little clangy sound effect that goes off as a name drop. But she was telling me one time over a gin and tonic, just before an evening dinner occasion that she'd invited myself and my wife to at Buckingham Palace, and she said, "Oh, I'm not very musical. my sister was, she said. And I said, I met your sister, Your Majesty, but I was wearing a Womble costume, so she wouldn't have remembered. But she, the Queen apparently, you know, she had quite rigorous piano lessons when she was young. She was very performance orientated, and was quite a handy piano player and singer. Getting up after dinner at a royal occasion, not a royal occasion, at a private occasion when they had the family around and everybody singing around the piano, was apparently not an unusual thing at all to happen. They would be singing down at the old Bull and Bush or whatever it might have been. In fact, she used to like, I say used to, she apparently is very keen on things like the show songs like Oklahoma, particularly Howard Keel singing that. She was a big fan of that. And the reason that I came into her orbit, apart from the fact that I wrote a piece for her 50th, the Golden Wedding Anniversary, for massed pipes and bands, which we did at the Royal Tournament. That was the first time I ever wrote anything for the Royal household. But I think she just had a very wide appreciation of many different kinds of music, and I think, well, it's pretty obvious that comes from, if you have to sit through as many things as she must have had to sit through in 70 years, politely nodding, and if it's horrible, she's still got to smile a little bit, you know,
The Duke of Edinburgh got to express his opinion when the Captain and Tennille, whom you will surely know, they were huge stars at one point, they sang Muskrat Love to her and the Duke of Edinburgh in the White House on one visit. And the Duke of Edinburgh said, I thought that bloody song about the muskrat went on a bit long. But she's not in a position to express an opinion like that.
No, I was thinking that. I was thinking, well, what am I going to say? What am I going to get asked? And I thought, well, there must have been the times. I mean, the good thing, of course, about having to sit through all of this stuff is that you get to know it. So opera, symphonic repertoire, all of the hymns. I mean, she has two favourite hymns, The Lord is My Shepherd and Praise My Soul, the King of Heaven. Apparently, she's being very religious, of course. But she would know the repertoire. I can imagine her and Prince Philip getting back some of those evenings, and after, behind closed doors, just sitting down in an armchair in the bedroom, going, "Whoa, that was a boring, rotten old lot of rubbish we just had to listen through." But I'm sure they just took it in good spirit, and everything. Of course, they're not. For example, they don't have the luxury you have of being able to write a critique of it, or even myself here on the television say I like or I don't like something, which is not what you've asked me to say. But
Mike, you've done arrangements for them. You've done orchestrations, lovely orchestration of Top Hat, White Tie and Tail. I mean, she likes songs. She and the Duke of Edinburgh, Oklahoma was like their first date in the West End. But you've arranged some Fred Astaire songs for like Top Hat, White Tie and Tails by Irving Berlin, for some of her occasions.
It's funny that I don't think I've ever uttered that publicly, so I don't know where you've got where you've been researching, but obviously you've got very granular research people there. But I did organise a few occasions at Buckingham Palace where we would have an orchestra and we'd put different bands in different rooms for the Queen's Christmas party, which, by the way, she paid for out of her own purse. It wasn't a public funded thing. But just to thank her own people within the palace and within her other various residences, people from the most lowly foot person to the higher, more senior royals, they would all be mixing together, and they'd walk in, and we'd be playing either some classical stuff while they walk around the palace, and later on maybe some more popular kind of things from the shows. But I've sort of gone off at a tower. You asked me about about Fred Astaire. Well, apparently Cheek to Cheek by Irving Berlin, what I've only recently read, since you asked me to do this, I just swatted it up this afternoon. But apparently that was on her top 10 of things she liked. But yes, I did do a thing on one of those palace occasions when I was conducting quite a large orchestra, and it was an opportunity that I sort of seized, really, because I knew she liked Fred Astaire. And so I was planning on doing an album, which I will do one of these days, called A Stairway to Heaven. And so I did a set of about 8 arrangements for like a jazz orchestra. And by the way, she was very much into Duke Ellington, all those kind of bands as well, the big bands.
Right.
I say she was, as if she's not around anymore, but she's got a very wide musical appreciation. But if you put strings with a big band, you have that Hollywood orchestra sound, which I loved. I've loved writing for that ever since they did Wumbling White Tie and Tails way back.
Well, we couldn't afford the full orchestra, but I gather you have your keyboard there. So just give us a taste of what you've played for the Queen over the year. Just give us a taste of something on your keyboard, and when the show goes out, we'll dub in the full orchestra.
Well, actually, I just happened to be in my music room, but I honestly didn't know that you were even going to ask me to play. It's a good job it's switched on. I know she likes this. Oh, that's too high for me to sing. And that's about all I can sort of do to fake my way through this moment, because I had no idea you were going to ask me to play anything. But maybe a little bit of Oklahoma wasn't too bad, if you forgive the slip.
Yeah, that was pretty. That was pretty good, though. I think Viscount Alexander would have gotten pretty annoyed with you if that's all you'd have played at that big square dance in Ottawa all those years ago. Thank you very much, Mike Batt. All these awful rock guys now, they've all got knighthoods and OBEs, but Mike has an LVO. He's a member of the a Lieutenant of the Royal Victorian Order, which is in the personal gift of the Queen, so it's very different. Thank you very much, Mike. Always great to see you. In our closing moments, what do you think of Kim Jong-un congratulating the Queen, says Philip. I don't think much of it, but oddly enough, that's an hereditary dictatorship. So all you people wanting to throw off the monarchy and have a republic, you'll just wind up with an hereditary head of state like Kim Jong-un. And I don't want that. So we're not going to do that. That'll do it. It has been a tremendous Jubilee Day. The jubilations will continue tomorrow. We wish Her Majesty all the best, but never fear. Dan Wootton is here to get your Jubilee night jumping. Dan.
Mark, I never thought I would see the day when you wanted to have a gossip about Harry and Meghan. Come on, Mark, I can talk about this all day. What do you want to ask me? What do you want to know?
No, I can't. She was stuck in Canada next door to a couple of friends of mine who are big names in Canada, and she's just thinking, oh no, these rinky-dink little Canadians. I got to get to Beverly Hills and the real A-listers. Go for her, savage her as much as you want.
Well, we do have Tom Bower here. He is writing a book at the moment about Meghan. He's got a real insight into all of that turmoil, because there might be smiles, Mark, in public, but let me tell you, the tensions and the acrimony behind the scenes between Meghan and the royal family are huge, so we'll be covering all of that with Tom Bower later.
Well, we'll be watching. It's been a great day so far, and it continues for another 3 days. And Dan's the best at late night telly, and he's coming up after the weather. God save the Queen.
UK will be wet for parts of northern England and Wales, plus Northern Ireland, drier elsewhere. Here's the details. Zooming into the southwest of England, and it will be a dry and bright start to the day here, with plenty of early sunshine on offer, especially towards the west. A little early mist and fog is possible in the southeast, quickly clearing. Otherwise, it's a dry and bright morning with sunny spells. Dry and bright across South Wales too, with sunny spells. The odd mist and fog patch is also likely here, especially in the valleys. There's a significant change in the weather as we head north to northwest England. It will be a cloudy start here with outbreaks of rain for many, turning heavy at times. We can expect further cloud and outbreaks of rain as we head east across the Pennines. The rain heaviest and most persistent over the hills, while it will remain driest in the east. It will be a mostly cloudy start to the day for southern Scotland, with some brighter spells possible in the east. Some showery rain is also likely across western areas. Northern Ireland will also have a cloudy start with some showery rain at times. It'll tend to turn drier and brighter here though through the morning with some sunny spells. The rain in the northwest will gradually ease and become more showery, staying mostly dry elsewhere with sunny spells developing. And that's how the weather is shaping up during tomorrow morning.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV, on radio, on digital.
Absolutely